Every mystery starts when reason fails. At Dyatlov Pass, it didn't fail because of monsters or secret weapons. It failed because fear rewrote how the human brain works. And even though we have explained everything about it, we still cannot comprehend the breakdown of the human mind under extreme conditions. So the question persists: why is it still alive, and how it came to be? One of Russia's biggest mysteries of modern times. So let's start with the phrase that began it all. And you know why I get it? I'm sure that you will agree with me. This is where this whole thing started. When the rescuers found the bodies, 4 of them had massive internal injuries, but no external trauma whatsoever, not even a scratch. The bodies were taken to the morgue, where full autopsies were performed, and after extensive medical analysis, the Russian authorities reached a conclusion that they could not explain internal injuries without external trauma. And so they wrote the only thing that they could. They were thinking that this was as if the bodies had been crushed from within. They couldn't write that down, so they wrote the next best thing: the cause of death, a compelling natural force. And that single phrase did it. That single phrase ignited a mystery that persists to our days and refuses to die. The statement spread quietly through the Soviet press. Later, doctors added that the injuries were so severe that it appeared as if the hikers had been hit by a car. And suddenly, a compelling natural force became synonymous with, we don't know what happened, we cannot explain it. Searchers had found a tent. They had followed faint footprints out of it. The tent had been slashed from the inside with knives, but no signs of struggle appeared. No blood. Just 9 set of tracks fading into the snow, most of them wearing only socks, walking towards the trees 1.5 kilometers down the slope. Inside the tent, the boots and the coats, neatly packed, as if the hikers had left in an orderly manner, not in panic. But they walked into minus 35 degrees Celsius weather with hurricane winds towards their back. The chilling factor must have been about minus 45, minus 50 degrees Celsius. With no gear, an impossible situation to survive. It made no sense. They started to look more like suicide than anything else. And for the families, the explanation was just unacceptable. These were professional hikers, trained, seasoned, skilled. And yet, the only official explanation that they had was a compelling natural force. No wonder weird theories started popping up out of nowhere. UFOs, YETI attacks, that's the snowy version of Bigfoot, secret weapons, shockwaves, murder. And considering what they knew back in the 1950s, some of those theories kind of make sense. 60 years later, driven by the online popularity of the Dyatlov Pass and the public pressure, Russian authorities reopened the case as a murder investigation, by the way. And they kind of solved it, not all the way, enough to be explained. Yet despite the new evidence and the official explanations, the Dyatlov Pass incident remains one of the most watched mysteries of the internet. And still most people believe that it cannot be explained at all. But why? But before answering that question, let's go over what we know. The last days of the hikers, the search, and how they were found. 10 members of the Ural Polytechnic Institute set on a hike to achieve a Type 4 certification. The challenge for them was to cross a portion of the northern Ural Mountains. The group was organized by 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov and 9 others, 2 women and 7 young men, all engineers. All members were professional experienced mountaineers. They all held a Type 2 certification. And this was to be the last challenge to achieve a Type 3 certification, which would have allowed them to be professional guides. Their route was to cover 300 kilometers, about 190 miles in difficult winter conditions. Igor Dyatlov meticulously planned a 16 to 18-day cross-country ski trip. Their destination was Mount Otterton, a specific peak in the northern Ural Mountains, which was a key part of their approved route to get certified. The trip started at the town of Shlevdosk. On January 26, 1959, they took a ride on a truck to the town of Visaya, from which they would travel by footer ski to Mount Otterton, and then back to Visaya. The next day, January 27, they rented a sledge and traveled 24 kilometers north. On January 28, 1959, Judy Judin, the 10th member of the expedition, felt a sharp pain in his leg from a sciatic nerve condition and he dropped out of the hike. He promised to meet the group at the rendezvous point 12 days later and headed back with the sledge to Visaya. On February the 1st, the group had made it to the Mount of the Dead, where they set up camp on the open slopes in the middle of a blizzard, 1.5 kilometers away from the tree line. On the early hours of February the 2nd, all members of the group would die. On February 21st, the search parties started retracing the group's steps. On February 27, they found the campsite, and the mystery began. The tent had been ripped open from the inside using knives. 7 members step outside the tent mildly dressed, barefoot, only wearing socks, one of them wearing a single boot. It is believed that Semyon Solotaryov and Nikolai Taibo had been outside the tent at the moment of the event, as they were fully dressed. Semyon was fully geared up. They walk in a single file towards the tree line, 1.5 kilometers down the slope. At the tree line, the group parted in two. 4 of them walked into the forest, but their tracks were lost as they were covered by snow. Their bodies would be found on May 5th, 2 months later. At the tree line, they found the remains of a fire under a large cedar tree, with signs of being climbed by at least one of the members and stripped out of its branches up to 7 meters up its trunk. Yuri Krivochenko and Yuri Dorochenko, shoeless and dressed only in their underwear, were found a few meters from that tree. They had their feet and hands burned, which is a common sign of trying to warm up limbs that have already gone numb from the cold. They died of hypothermia. On February 27, between the cedar tree and the tent, the searchers found Igor Dyatlov 300 meters from the cedar tree, Sindaya Kolmogorova 630 meters from the cedar tree, and 6 days later on March the 5th, Rustem Slobodin 480 meters from the cedar tree. The 3 seem to have died in poses suggesting that they were attempting to return to the tent. They had no injuries and their deaths were due to hypothermia. In a ravine 50 meters farther into the woods from the cedar tree, they found the remaining 4 hikers, Taibo, Ludmila, Semyon, and Alexander, under 4 meters of snow. Oddly enough, they had built a shelter, dug out a den, built beds, but they were unused. The bodies were some 10 meters from the shelter in a deep part of the ravine. Taibo had a major cranial injury that would have rendered him unconscious on the spot. Ludmila and Semyon had massive chest injuries, broken ribs, crushed chests. Doctors described the injuries as being hit by a car, but the bodies had no external damage. And now we get to the theories of what happened. And why do we need theories, actually? Well, there is a sequence of events that need to be explained that are really unexplainable. And that sequence of events is the decisions that Igor Dyatlov makes throughout the whole ordeal. Why he camps on the slopes, knowing that he's facing hurricane type of winds, and all the other things. Why they slashed the tent to get out of it, destroying it. That's their lifeline. They do that, they get out with no equipment, but they don't go back to put their equipment. That's the other one. And lastly, without equipment, they decide to go down the slope into the tree line. Once they took the first step towards the tree line, they were dead. Like completely dead. Before they were kind of dead, but then they were absolutely dead. Now, the whole death things have been quite completely explained. We'll go over them really quickly, but like the most plausible scenario of what happened. But before that, we go through the theories. The outlandish ones, the UFOs and the Yetis, they all were born out of pictures that were recovered from the cameras of the team. This one is the UFO picture, completely dismissed. This one is the Yeti picture. That's not a Yeti, that's a guy in a hoodie. That one's dismissed. Then the murder scenario, somebody forced them to do all those sequence of decisions. Not camping on the slopes, that one's completely unexplainable, but the other sequence of decisions, they were forced to basically, and that's how the murder scenarios came to be, which at the time in the 1950s was like the most plausible explanation there. That was at the hands of the KGB, the first one, which was a very long story, but it's completely dismissed and baseless, so I'm not gonna go into it. It's suffice to say that's dismissed. The other one is at the hands of the Mansi people. Well, those guys, they had killed before, allegedly, because of manhunting on their grounds without permission. But in this case, actually, Igor Dyatlov meets a Mansi hunter, and the hunter tells him not to camp at the slopes because the winds are too strong and they're just gonna get stronger by the minute. In fact, Igor Dyatlov writes that on in his diary, and then he adds that he cannot imagine somebody camping on those type of winds. And he goes further into describing how he feels the winds, and he says that the winds feels like being behind the thrusters of a jet airplane at takeoff. And he's inside the tree line, and he's going to get himself out of the tree line in about 2 to 3 hours after writing that down. And then he goes to camp on the slopes that he has just a few hours before written down that he cannot imagine camping on winds that were fairly better than what he was experiencing at the slopes. A complete mystery. And from there on, well, everything just goes south, right? So the most plausible explanations, it's the slab avalanche and Katabatic winds. Both of them explain how the tent could have been destroyed and how the group would feel panic and slash and get themselves out of the tent. It will not explain the other sequence of decisions that happened, but at least it would explain why they get out of the tent in panic. The real question here and the real mystery about the Dyatlov Pass incident is a personal mystery, and is what would you have done in their place? The real mystery is how the human mind breaks under fear and crisis, and it breaks in very weird, very strange, very illogical ways, and people make decisions that, for lack of another word, they are very stupid decisions that get them killed. But it's because of lack of training. The only thing that will save you in a situation like that is training, and like real life threatening experiences like the military training. If you're gonna go hiking and experience the climate like the ones experienced by the Dyatlov team, extensive military real life training on those same circumstances, it's the only thing that's gonna save you. Like pilots train, they train on real life, and when they cannot train, they go on a simulation that simulates real life. And there is a very beautiful case about that. Very briefly, it's the Captain Sully ditching the airplane on the Hudson River and saving everybody. He managed to survive because he's an experienced glider, so when the engines stop working, it's just in a very big glider for him, and he lands on the river and saves everybody. When they go into simulations and they accuse him of doing wrong because he ditched the airplane in the river, the simulation done by computers, the airplane is land at the airport perfectly. He says, okay, put pilots inside the simulation and throw this scenario at them without any warning and see what happens. Every single pilot crashes because every single pilot is trained to go for the airport no matter what. If you're a pilot and you try to ditch an airplane, most probable outcome is that you're gonna die. So they go for the airport, even though at the moment that they decided to go for the airport, they have lost 40 seconds. The airplane has no altitude to make it to the airport, but the training says go for the airport, and they go to the airport in a very illogical and stupid way. I don't like using the word stupid, but it's a stupid decision once you know all the facts. But they lack the training, they go for the airport and they die in the simulation, right? For Captain Sully, the airport is not an option. That's what his training says to his brain, into his mind. He goes for the water, he saves the people. In the case of Igor Dyatlov, he has no training to face the situation that he's in. That moment, everybody starts acting out of panic and they die. So what's the most probable thing that would happen? Is that well, for some unexplainable reason, they camp at the slope. There's no way to explain that one, but they do. At that moment, I think that they were already dead, but, well. Then they face either a slab avalanche or Katabatic winds. Both of them could have created a scenario in which the tent just stopped being functional. Then now they start acting out of panic and they slash their way out of the tent. For an unexplainable reason, they grab no gear and they go with socks down 1.5 kilometers on the snow in minus 30 degrees Celsius weather with sensations of minus 60 degrees Celsius. They get down to the tree line. Once they're there, they realize that they're screwed. 3 of them, Igor and 2 others, try to go back to the camp while the 2 Yuris try to create a campfire. They are the ones with less gear, so they die, actually waiting for Igor and the other 2 to get gear from the camp back to them. But Igor and the other dies in the what would be a heroic attempt, because at that moment I think that everybody that's going back to the camp knows that they're not going to make it and they're just going to die. It's like a Hail Mary attempt that is bound to fail. And then it's the other 4. The other 4 built a den. They have gear. They're the ones that are, 2 of them are fully geared up. The other 2 are mildly better dressed, but they managed to build a den. At that point, they're out of danger from the cold. They're not gonna survive either the long run, but they're out of danger from the immediate cold. They have very bad luck. The ceiling of the den gives in and about 40 tons of snow fall on top of them and they're crushed, and that explains all the other injuries. That's it. They die. Everybody dies. Now how they die is completely explained, like I said. Why they made the decisions is completely unexplainable, and it's out of fear, lack of training. So let me know if you would have survived. What are the decisions that you would have made? In this scenario, you already made the foolish decision of camping on the slope. What's next? Let me know in the comments and subscribe. It really helps. I really appreciate your time. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.
The Fuku Files!